Hello and welcome back to Melodic Bites. I'm Matthew Jeans, and today we'll be exploring a topic that's at the heart of societal transformation in South Korea: the evolving ethics of food consumption and its intriguing parallels with contemporary issues in the music industry. So we'll navigate the complex terrain where traditional practices meet modern sensibilities, examining how shifts in cultural norms are influencing both the culinary and musical landscapes of South Korea.
Step into the world of Melodic Bites, where every episode is a bite-sized sensory journey through the intertwined melodies of cultures and cuisines. From the secret stories behind your favorite dishes to the beats that move nations, we explore the delicious interplay between the rich traditions of food and music. Each episode is a new discovery, a story that unfolds the hidden connections between what we eat and what we listen to. Are you ready to stir the pot? Tune in, turn up the volume, and indulge in the symphony of flavors and sounds. This is Melodic Bites.
Today's episode will be a little bit different from the ones I've done so far in that I'll be discussing some news related to food, something that can be viewed as very sensitive and controversial. Specifically, there is a law that just passed in South Korea pertaining to the prohibition of dog meat in culinary practices. I read this and was like, okay, well, I have to discuss this because it's not every day that you see laws being created around types of meat that can be used. I also feel like this has a lot of cultural implications, which is what a lot of my topic area is about, and food, music, and intersection of the two, but also discussing the cultural and historical implications of them. So yes, you heard me right, talking about dog meat and food consumption today. South Korea has taken this historic step by passing legislation that will outlaw the slaughter and sale of dogs for meat by 2027. And this pivotal move seeks to end a practice deeply rooted in the nation's culinary tradition, reflecting a significant shift in ethical standards regarding animal treatment and consumption. So one dish that's normally associated with this use of dog meat is Boshintang, and it's a traditional Korean dog meat stew and holds a complex place in South Korea's culinary history. It was once considered a delicacy and imbued with cultural significance, and it's been a part of Korean cuisine for centuries, embodying both historical practices and the evolving nature of cultural traditions. The shift in perspective, particularly among South Korea's younger generation, is really stark, and there's growing dissociation from the consumption of dog meat influenced by changing attitudes towards animals, and especially pets. And this generational divide is indicative of broader societal changes where ethics, animal rights, and personal dietary choices are increasingly at the forefront of public discourse. So I'm going to try to present this from both sides. I just want to make it clear that I'm going to try to stay unbiased in this episode because I think you can make an argument for both, even though I personally would choose to not consume dog meat. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But the ban has significant repercussions for various groups. I'm just presenting some of the news to you today. That's all I am. I am the messenger. There's this expanded impact on dog meat farmers and restaurant owners. So this transition away from the dog meat industry isn't just a business shift, but it's a really large and profound life change for several populations. And dog meat farmers, often part of a tradition passed down through generations, now face this reality of either transforming their farms or abandoning a trade they've known their entire lives. And similarly, restaurant owners specializing in dishes like Boshintang must reimagine their culinary offerings or just simply shut down. And the emotional and economic toll of this shift is significant, especially for those in their later years who may find it challenging to adapt to new careers or industries. And this change not only affects their financial stability, but also their cultural identity and sense of purpose. Then you have those deeper ethical considerations and changing perceptions. And the legislation against dog meat is part of a broader global conversation about the ethics of animal consumption and the rights of animals. And in many societies, including South Korea, the perception of dogs has shifted from being seen as a source of sustenance to being recognized as companions. And I think that's a pretty global worldview. This change in perception is influenced by factors such as the rise in pet ownership, increased awareness of animal sentience, and a growing philosophical and ethical discourse on the rights of animals. And the evolving view challenges long-standing traditions and asks societies to reconsider the moral implications of their dietary choices. Another component of this is the comparative perspective with other countries. So looking at South Korea's decision in the global context underscores the variety of cultural norms and practices related to food. And in some regions of China and Vietnam, dog meat is still consumed, often linked to specific cultural beliefs or traditions. And this contrast raises important questions about cultural relativism and food ethics and the challenges of navigating animal rights in a global context. It highlights how food practices are deeply embedded in cultural identities and the complexities involved in judging these practices from outside those cultures. And this is why I personally don't want to take a stance on this, because to us in America, I feel like generally, broadly speaking, I'm not meaning to speak for everyone, but we would obviously disagree with the consumption of dog meat. That's not something that is in our culture or our tradition. We see dogs more as pets. And even then, there are a lot of people who don't see them as pets and would never own a dog and see them as wild animals no matter what. But I digress. And so who are we to necessarily judge, someone else's culture just because it's different does not necessarily make it wrong. And so this comparison really illustrates the dynamic nature of cultural practices, which can evolve or be reevaluated over time in response to changing societal values and global influences. On this subject matter, I think it's important that tradition is tradition, yes, but traditions can change over time, just like cultures can change over time. So I am also in the camp of, while I agree that this is culturally normal for South Korea to consume dog meat, however, times change, people change, traditions change, cultures change over time. And so I don't believe necessarily that because it's always been this way, that it always should be this way. I think that populations can have a lot of mind shifts over time, and we've seen that over a lot of controversial topics, even here in America, politically, and we see that over time things change. And then you have people who want to fight against that change. And so I think this is really interesting that there's such a big controversy going on right now that's over food, because here in America, for instance, we kill, I don't even know how many millions of chickens and cows and all sorts of animals, pigs, for consumption. And over there, dogs are seen the same way that we see those animals here. And it's hard to wrap your head around something like that, but it's true. And so that's why I'm trying to stay neutral on the subject matter, because it is sensitive, and, I would never want to consume dog meat. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong for them to, just because I wouldn't. But the main point being that culture is always changing. So just because it was culturally accepted centuries ago doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be now. I wanted to also transition from the culinary world to the realm of music, hence this podcast. But it's intriguing to see how societal attitudes in one area can mirror those in another. In the South Korean music industry, there was also a recent controversy surrounding the K-pop group New Jeans. So New Jeans is a rising K-pop group, and they found themselves at the center of a controversy due to the suggestive nature of their song lyrics. And this issue sparked a lot of considerable debate, highlighting a cultural and generational divide in perceptions of appropriateness and artistic expression. And as a relatively new group in the dynamic K-pop landscape, New Jeans' encounter with controversy early in their career sheds light on the evolving nature of music and public perception in South Korea as well. And so their music is obviously appealing to a younger audience, and it became a focal point for discussions on the boundaries of creativity and expression in the music industry. So the controversy around New Jeans and the debate over dog meat consumption in South Korea both reflect deeper societal shifts. And in each case, there's a tension between traditional practices and modern sensibilities, where younger generations are challenging long-established norms. Just as the perception of dogs shifted from food to companions, the understanding of what's acceptable in music is also evolving, influenced by changing societal values and a globalized perspective on ethics and aesthetics. I just want to take a couple of minutes to delve into the broader cultural and generational shifts that are illustrated in these food and music controversies in South Korea, one of which being reflecting on broader cultural and generational shifts. So both the dog meat ban and the New Jeans controversy highlight a significant generational shift in values and perceptions. And this is what I alluded to earlier. Younger generations in South Korea are increasingly embracing globalized progressive viewpoints, often clashing with those traditional norms and values. And this divergence is reshaping cultural practices and societal norms, leading to a reevaluation of long-held traditions in both food and entertainment. Then you have the role of the media and public opinion. So media plays a crucial role in shaping and often reflecting public opinion on these controversies and just really anything in general. I feel like 90% of our problem in America is the media, and don't even get me started on that. But through extensive coverage and social media discussions, these issues are brought up in the public eye, fueling debate and influencing societal attitudes. So the media serves as this platform for various viewpoints, highlighting the complexities of these issues and the diversity of opinions within South Korea. And then lastly, you have the future implications for South Korean society and cultural industries. And so these controversies have significant implications for the future of South Korean society and its cultural industries. And they signal a move towards more ethical and globally conscious practices in both the culinary and entertainment sectors. So for the cultural industries, this might mean more careful consideration of global standards and sensitivities while maintaining a unique cultural identity. For society as a whole, these shifts could lead to a more inclusive and diverse cultural landscape, reflecting a blend of traditional values and modern global influences. So, what do you make of all of this? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. How do you see these cultural shifts from where you're standing? Are there similar changes happening around you and where you are in the world? I'd love to hear your take on it. Also, let me know if you like this kind of real world stuff. It's different, but I think it's a pretty neat thing to explore with discussing some things in the news as they occur. Obviously, I don't think this is something that I would want to do long term with this podcast, but every once in a while, if I find something that's interesting, then I want to be able to talk about it with people and share it with people in case you missed it, because you might not even know that happened. But it's definitely going to evolve the culinary landscape in South Korea as a whole, and then it sets this precedent for what about Vietnam and China in the future. Are those countries going to eventually ban dog meat? What does that mean for the food industry as a whole over there? And so I just think it's really interesting to discuss. I'm going to get off my soapbox on that, but as always, thanks for listening. Please leave some feedback and let me know what interests you about the intersection of food and music, and maybe I'll discuss it in an episode. So until next bite, keep your beats tasty and your eats in tune.
With that final note, we've reached the end of another Melodic Bites episode. Remember, the conversation continues on the blog at melodiceats.com and across all social media platforms at Melodic Meal Maestro. Your stories, insights, and culinary curiosities are what make this journey so enriching. Don't hesitate to send your requests for topics or dishes you're curious about. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating or review. Your feedback helps keep the table set for success. Thanks again for listening to Melodic Bites.